Black theater isn't what Shakespeare begot, nor is it one with Tennyson. Its psychedelic beat has little in common with Shelley and Keats. It has its own diameter, not iambic pentameter. It has upon it its own rule of sonnet. No straight-laced corset, nothing to force it. It shrieks, it streaks, it's felt, it belts, it sings, it swings, it cries, it lies. Its verses are in paragraph. It grooves, it moves, it's uncanny. Go read some Nikki Giovanni. It's a brand new school, both hot and cool, a blues beat, bittersweet, and deep, deep blue, bright red, high yellow. It's loud, it's proud, it's the wildest strum, a super drum. It sets up its own condition, defies tradition. It shocks, it rocks, it mocks, it knocks. It's humor, it's drama. It's also about your mama. It loves, it transcends, it's a brand new dimension. It's many, many tracks. So come, sit down with me and squeal and spat a soulful rap. Now come as we rap about Black theater. Pure poetry. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote at the start of the Harlem Renaissance that Black theater should be for us, about us, and by us. Later in the 1970s, legendary theater director and producer Woody King Jr. wrote an essay asking the question, what is the state of Black theater? During that time, African-American theater was in a rapid growth spurt. It was the time of the Black arts movement, and much like the renewal and resurgence of past movements of Black artistic expression, the performing arts, particularly the theater, played a key role in spreading the words and ideas of the movement. Theater companies that focused solely on the African-American condition were sprouting up across the country. They allowed artists to tell the story of Blacks in ways never done before. New works fostered new ideas on how to see themselves and the future. At one point, there were 200+ Black repertory theater companies in the United States. Theaters whose sole mission was to promote and elevate the communities where they were located. As a theater historian, I can tell you that this is no longer true. At one point, every major city had a Black theater company again. This is no longer true. Since the 1990s, Black repertory theaters have been in the decline. As I prepare to journey to the Black Theater Network Conference and the Black Arts Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I ponder, what is the state of Black theater? Habari Gani. What's the news? The state of African American theater. Where is it heading? Hello, and welcome to The Market on CCP TV, Community College of Philadelphia's Emmy-nominated educational channel. I'm your host, Dr. Ardencia Hall Karambe. Today, I'd like to welcome my guests, Mr. Johnnie Hobbs Jr. and Mr. Forrest McClendon. Mr. Hobbs is a retired tenured associate professor from the Ira Brand School of Theater Arts at the University of the Arts. He was the advisor of the African American Student Union and the African Diaspora Collective, and has been the chairman of the advisory board of the Academic Achievement Program. He is the recipient of the Mary Louise Beitzel Award for Distinguished Teaching in 1996 and received the 2015 Theater Philadelphia Lifetime Achievement Award and is a 3-time Barrymore Award nominee. For those of you who don't know about the Barrymores, it's Philadelphia's equivalent to the Tony Awards, a Tony nomination. He is proud of his 40 years plus affiliation with the nationally recognized Freedom Theater. Mr. McClendon received a Tony Award nomination for his Broadway debut as Mr. Tambone in The Scottsboro Boys. Post-Broadway, Forrest received his second Barrymore Award for his reprisal of the role at the Philadelphia Theatre Company, and also starred in the London premiere, which received the 2014 London Evening Standard Award for Best Musical. He is the recipient of the prestigious 2014 Lunt Fontaine Fellowship for, quote, for the top 10 regional actors in America, end quote. His national-wide appearances range from Shakespeare to Susan Laurie Parks. He has performed and or taught in many area theaters. His upcoming project, Red Velvet, by Lolita Chakrabarti at the Lantern Theater, opens in fall of 2017. Forrest frequently teaches master classes in the U.S. and in the UK at the National Theatre Institute at the Eugene O'Neill Theatre Centre, Royal Centre School for Speech and Drama, and the Royal Conservatory in Scotland. Welcome, gentlemen. It's good to see you both again. It's been a while since we've had an opportunity to talk, and I'm extremely pleased to have you here. So today, we're going to talk about the state of African American theater. So question number one, what do you think is the state of African American theater at this present time?
Well, I think it's constantly changing. Mm-hmm. I think that theaters are, people get excited with ideas and they develop a theater. I think the state of African American theater or black theater in this country is oftentimes, how would you say, in transition. I belonged to a theater for many years, and one of the things that I found that people have difficulty doing in terms of developing theater is developing the business, mm-hmm. the thing that makes it, the thing that creates the business aspects, the ability to keep taxes, mm-hmm. the ability to run a business, as well as, of course, you know, perform the arts mm-hmm. correctly. So I think that it's in a state of transition, and we absolutely sometimes never know where we're going with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's one of the things that's happened to theater in general, both black theaters and white yes. theaters, that as we've transitioned further and further away from the art and more towards corporate models for theaters, yes. we've had to get a whole lot better at running the business side of it. Mm-hmm. And as people have fallen behind on right. that part of it, we've watched a lot of theaters implode.
Indeed. And as I often tell people, when we go through school, we're not trained so much to do the business right. aspect of theater. Right. We're taught to do the art. And so right. that has to come to us in other ways, and often it's through hardships and yes. having lost at something. So making sure those books are always straight is definitely something we must aim for. And I agree with Forrest. I think it goes across the board because
yes, it does.
Theater is a rich man's sport. And so, you know, and when you have very little money, you have to make sure you know where it's going. And to receive grants and stuff, you have to be able to produce that stuff. With it. That's right. Or they won't allow you to get it. So I agree. What do you think is the role of African American theater companies in and on the American theater landscape? Should we even continue to use the term African American theater or African American theater company to differentiate theater companies when we see crossovers in so many areas, not just in acting, but directing, scripts. Everybody's doing everything and putting everybody in anything. I mean, we could go to the controversy that's happening in Portland with the Edward Albee, yes, who's right. afraid of Virginia right, Woolf in right. the casting of a black actor, and Albee estate pulling the script because he did not allow and did not want a black actor right. in his piece. So what do you think is, you know, what's going on? What do you think is the direction? How do African American companies or actors respond to that type of, when we still see that certain doors are going to be closed because of, especially when you're doing revivals such as Virginia Woolf, sure. but where do we fit, or where does it fit on the American theatrical landscape?
For me, when I even think about the idea of black theaters, mm-hmm. black theater institutions, mm-hmm. we're talking about an original definition that was theater that was by, for, and mm-hmm. about black people. Yes. And I think that what we've seen is something distinctly different emerge mm-hmm. out of that. And I think for me, August Wilson is at the center of that in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. In 1992, when he did the town hall with Robert Brustein, yes. they were debating the state of black theater, and August's argument was really for a black theater that some saw as myopic or mm-hmm. homogenous. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that the outgrowth of that has been that he's carved a place out for us in the mainstream theater, in the commercial mm-hmm. theater. We're at the moment where all 10 of his plays have now literally been produced on Broadway. This is an extraordinary achievement for any playwright, regardless of color. So it feels to me like that's really what August allowed for us to happen in a lot of ways as actors of color. I have only been privileged to do one August Wilson play, but I've had the privilege of being at regional theaters all over the country because he carved out a place for us literally to do that. So I feel like we're at a place where, as an African American actor, it's difficult for me to talk about what Black theaters are doing specifically. It's me taking my Blackness into theaters of every color.
Yeah, I've wafted with this thing for many, many years, and a lot of it is really sort of defining what Black means to you. I mean, I've kind of decided what Black means to me as an artist, as a man in America. And I think that the thing that's going to really make these things ultimately successful is the development of an audience, the development of people to come and sit down and view these things. I think when art is made, it is meant to be experienced. It is meant to be. It is meant to receive some kind of subjective thought. You know, so a lot of times, folk, you know, have difficulty with. I used to have difficulty with white actors doing August Wilson's work and that kind of thing, but I've kind of changed from that because I think ineptitude can exist anywhere. I've seen Black folks ineptitude, and I've seen white folks inept at saying what the art was about. So I think it has a lot to do with your ability to subjectively think, to subjectively have an interpretation, and to allow that to come to fore. I mean, obviously, my sensibilities, my genetic memory is connected to who I am. So, I mean, I feel that I'm qualified to tell my story. But I also have to have a skill set. I also have to know how to direct. I also have to know how to tell stories. I also have to know how to put people in places that creates tension and something happens in the evening that you're sitting there in the theater. So it's a broad spectrum of things that we have to engage to really sort of continue to sort of filter and tell this story.
You mentioned something interesting, and that is the development of audiences.
Yes.
And as a person who's been involved in African American theater, not just African American theater, but theater across the board, that has always been one of the hardest things, I think, for a theater to do is to develop that audience.
Yes.
So how do we get people from any community, but specifically African American community, who will come out in droves to see a regional tour show? Sure. But to support the local theater, how do we get them into the seats? Do you have any suggestion as a theater producer myself? What am I supposed to do?
They don't necessarily come out in droves to see August Wilson in Black theater or in the Black institution. They will come out in droves to see something else, you know, something that's talking about church or something that's talking about a relationship with a man who you love and he's done something wrong to you. That kind of theater is thriving in this country. I mean, that kind of theater is there at any moment in time across the country. They're 80, 95% capacity. People come in and they love it. And I think there's something to be gained from that. I think there's some kind of exchange that's got to happen from that because they are developing an audience. Some of the theaters some of the theaters that I know are having difficulty developing audiences because of the materials, because of what you have to ultimately sort of massage people with how you want them to get into your seats and get into your place. It's a very difficult thing, and audiences die off. So you've got to sort of create material that excites people. And sometimes I think that, you know, we get so caught up in our theater and our art form that we say, this is what should excite you. No, that does not excite me. I'm excited by something else.
I agree completely that in a nutshell, we look at the Black audience in a homogeneous way. Yes. We look at white audiences in a homogeneous way, but Black audiences are complex. I remember taking my mother to see a play, I think it was called Breath Boom, and it was, I thought, a really interesting play about young black women that were involved in gangs. My mother worked with at-risk youth, and I thought I was really proud of myself for taking her into New York to see this play that I thought we would both really relate to. And it turns out that she would much have preferred the kind of religious plays that you're describing. Sure. And she felt a bit offended that I was taking her to see something where people were playing at something that she deals with on a regular basis. So I think that a big part of my own snobbery is the idea that we sometimes are not in touch with what even our own families might be interested in seeing. And I think that's really the key for a lot of local theater companies, to be very, very mindful of their community as family. And ask yourself what your family is interested in seeing.
Okay, I'm gonna be for real, because some of my family don't know what they want, and I'm gonna be real about that.
Sure.
And it's like, so are we? The idea is, are we going to play to the base nature, many times, of what people want to see on stage, and then at the same time reject some of the skill sets that we have to have. I mean, having seen some plays where people literally stop because I forgot my line, and then and you know what I'm saying? How do we meet that, what our audience needs, our community needs, with our skill set, and still be able to get them in the door?
I think it's a process. I think there are going to be some failures. I think there are going to be some things that people are going to like, some things that people are not going to like. And you're right. People are going to sit there and say, "This is not what I want to see. I'm offended. Why am I here saying?" I think it's just a process. I think we have people in place, personnel in place who knows how to develop audiences. I mean, I think that there's got to be some kind of science to it, some kind of approach to it, some kind of study to it that allows us to sort of, this is what goes along with having a successful business, those corporate models, those persons who can sort of, find the right things to put together to make these things work. And it's going to be, but the audiences die off. They've got to be, and most times we've got to concentrate on young people. Most times it's going to develop by developing young people, young audiences. It's called that for a reason. Young audiences will ultimately sort of allow these institutions to thrive, but they've got to, the approach has to happen.
Yeah, I think Hamilton is a big part of that story right there, because we're seeing something that is distinctly popular.
Sure.
And it has resulted in exposing people, again, black, white, young, and old, to something that they otherwise would not have been exposed to.
Right.
And they, as popular as it is, what's interesting is that it is for the masses, but because it's become so popular, the masses are priced out of it to a certain extent. So that the very thing that we created in order to attract them to the theater, we've created a situation where they can't have access to it. So those are actually some of the questions that I have. Here's a place where the doors are bursting open, but how do we make sure, most importantly, that all people, regardless of zip code, have access to it?
And when we get all of these people, the exciting thing is to get all of these kinds of persons in the theater. And if one person is crying, one person is laughing, well, both responses could be valid for what they're seeing. Both responses of laughter and tear can be valid, and that's the thing that's really exciting. So.
Right. Definitely from their perspective, personal perspectives, because that's really what theater is about. It's like touching those personal perspectives of the audience. So, quick question, and this kind of leads into a little bit more personal area. So, all of us sitting here took that leap and pursued a career in the theater, and in many cases, especially, and I will say, I know in African American community, 9 times out of 10 they go, "What? You're majoring in what?" How you gonna get a job when you come out? What you gonna do? Because they see majoring in business or majoring in science as guaranteed jobs when they got it, not the pursuit of theater. So what advice would you give to the young theater person, a person who is on that fence, who's trying to decide whether or not if they are going to make that leap?
Well, I will say, everybody has the right and responsibility to dream. Dreams are one of the few things in life that are absolutely tax-free. And sometimes somebody wants to be an accountant, somebody wants to be an actor, somebody wants to be a playwright, somebody wants to be this. And in this country, I think theater training in colleges, higher institutions have become really quite popular somewhere around mid-60s on. Now they're very popular, now they're very competitive with one another. And now we have, BFAs, which is a really intense degree. And I would suggest that if anyone who is really serious about their craft, serious about developing themselves, they try to sort of look for those programs if it's part of their pursuit. They're great programs. The training is conservatory training. It's very intense. It's very focused. At the same time, they're also so supportive of foundation, subject matter as well, social sciences and things like that. But I think it prepares you to be competitive on the marketplace, and there is a marketplace out there, and you have to sort of take your space and be accounted. But I think the training has a lot to do with that. Because everybody's not natural. Everybody can't say that I was born with it. You have to sort of stretch yourself. You have to become educated. You have to become cultured. You have to develop an aesthetic. You have to develop what is beauty, what is not beauty. And I think all of this stuff ultimately sort of begins to make the person. So I would say, pursue your dream. Don't be deterred. And it can be expensive. Try to get some special assistance if you can, but get your training and train.
A great friend of mine just walked into the studio, and this conversation would not be as whole as it could be without his contribution. So I would like to welcome Lee K. Richardson for joining us in this conversation about African American theater.
Glad to be here.
Lee is a professor at Temple. Why don't you tell the people a little bit more about yourself?
You want the long version or the real short? No, I'll just co-founder of Crossroads Theater Company, which is the first black theater to win the Tony Award. So proud. First black regional theater to win the Tony Award. So proud. Co-founder. Produced this little-known artist, George C. Wolfe, did his first play called The Color Museum that we ended up doing in New York and London and LA. And I've lived on the West Coast, and now I'm here in Philly, and I'm excited to be here. I know these gentlemen, we call them the old heads of the theater. And so I'm here, and I'm excited to be here because I really respect my colleagues, and thank you for having me.
And I appreciate you coming in today. So we were having a discussion about the state of African American theater. And so my question for you is, what do you think is the state of African American
I
theater?
listened to my two esteemed colleagues on the panel, and they covered a great deal of it. And particularly, I think Johnny is right in terms of knowing who the audience is. Because if we want to develop those audiences, we have to know who they are. When I started Crossroads, Johnny can talk back to Freedom. Black theater and black audience were very different than they are today.
Yes.
You didn't have the Tyler Perrys, right? You just began to get the, who's the beauty shop guy? Garrett, Shelley Garrett.
Shelley Garrett, yes.
End of the 80s, you had just started to get Shelley Garrett.
That's right.
Crossroads started in 78. Freedom even before that,
Right.
you see? So we were developing an audience that didn't know the new Chitlin Circuit show. It was theater. And at Crossroads, I remember those early audiences. I'll never forget, show was over, we're starting to clean up, get ready for the evening show, and there's this couple who were probably in their maybe early 40s, sitting on the front row, and they weren't moving anywhere. And so after about 10 minutes, I went up to them, I said, is there anything I do, can I help you? And they said, oh no, we're just staying for the next show. Because they were thinking of it as what?
Movies. The movies.
Okay?
Sure, absolutely.
We got to realize that unless you lived in New York City and could go to Broadway and all the hip Broadway, off-Broadway stuff, you weren't seeing no live theater. Unless you lived in North Jersey or Philly and your family took you to go. So you had the parents that were like Forrest. You had the parents that were like, I want my kid to experience this. And because I lived in Jersey City, I got taken over a lot. You know, Alvin Ailey, all that kind of stuff. And my parents were like, that's good for him. Anyway, my point being, we developed an audience from scratch, right? But it was very much about educating that audience. And I hate to use that term because it sounds like I know better than everybody else, but I think we understand what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
But here's the interesting thing, and I know you guys can attest to that. We also had the white audiences that were going to off-Broadway, who had that tradition, because the Jewish have always supported the people, right?
Sure.
So we had both. Because people was like, here we got this black theater, right? Great quality. We're going to come see this because we're close. So we built that kind of audience. Now it's what? 40 years later.
40 years later.
Things have changed.
Right.
So we have to think about, Johnny was so on point when he said, we need these marketing geniuses.
Yes.
right? We need these marketing geniuses, and they're out there. Trust me, there are kids that are out there now, young people that are out there now that know marketing.
That's right.
Because what does marketing have? Social network, it's a big thing. We got to get to that audience. Because if we give them quality, they're coming. Don't tell me they won't, okay? If we give them quality, and everybody knows what that is, they're coming. But we got to get them.
Sure.
And Johnny's right, that it's like finding, what was that difference between original man and civilized man? They called it what? The missing link, remember?
Missing link,
We've
yes.
got to find the missing link.
Yes, yes, yes.
To connect.
I heard one time, I heard Charles Fuller talk about this and said that one day theater is going to be on your iPad. You can pick it up and open up your play and view the play right there on Facebook. You know, so the technology of developing these audiences has got to be tapped probably even more than it's tapped now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think social media is without a question a way to do it.
Yes.
Okay, think about it. I know we don't have a lot of time, but Forrest said something about Hamilton. Now, here we go. All right, now I'm a big mouth and I always say my piece, but that's why you got me here, right? What is Hamilton? What is Hamilton if not Elvis Presley in theater style? If you know what I'm saying. What is Hamilton if not that? It's taking again African American music, African American style, right? Everybody on that stage is brown, and they're turning it into this marketing, you know, giant. But what's the root of it? What's the root of it? It's that new energy, okay? And if you dress it up and make it look good on Broadway, again, people are still, you know, those people are buying it. Why? Because they know the truth, they know the energy, they know that. It's always been that, right?
Yes.
Music-wise, we've always owned all of that. So we've got to be smart like he's smart. We got to say, we can make, okay?
We can make Hamiltons.
We can do whatever we want.
Indeed.
And do it where it's thought-provoking and at the same time entertainment, because we can never forget, people are coming to be what? Entertained. We know that's the truth, and that's our responsibility.
Yes.
I'm sorry, guys. It's the 21st century. And how many people these days are going to sit there and sit for 3 hours and not move? It's not it.
Do you have something to add, Forrest? You look like you do.
Well, in a nutshell, I think that's a two-headed animal, and we can't really have it both ways. In a nutshell, if we make quality, they will come, and there are plays that go on for 3 and 4 hours, and if there are quality, people will come. So there is an audience in my mind for the 3-hour play, for the 3-hour August Wilson. But it absolutely, as I think Lee was saying, has to be quality.
Yes.
I think that's the, if anything else, that's the above board thing that must happen in any theatrical production. There must be quality to the art, and then that word is going to get passed on, and they will say, yeah, it may not be your typical story, but there's something good about it.
I think that we have to get this new audience, and when you say Hamilton, you're talking a lot about these kids in their 20s, right? And we need to be able to get, in terms of black theater, we need to be able to get that audience into what we do, right? And Forrest is right, it is a two-headed monster, because if you quote unquote dumb it down and, you know, take away this idea that, well, you're going to put all your phones down and you're going to sit and you're just going to think and you're going to relate to what's going on. That's a mindset that people have to be developed in, right?
Sure.
They've got to be. Sure. Because if you're used to Tyler Perry, you're then coming into the theater expecting that. And then if you don't get that, well, wait a minute. So it really needs.
I see that in class as an acting teacher.
it's.
But they do it like this. I don't want you to do it.
Yeah,
I don't want you to do it like that.
So it really does require. But I do think that young people now are really especially young black men and women. They're really starting to expand and go beyond the boundaries of what the black experience is about. You notice that. You see that more and more and more and more. You know.
So this has been a fantastic moment for me indeed with your lateness coming in. I appreciate you though. Okay, coming in. So gentlemen, Johnny, Forrest, Lee, I appreciate you all. Thank you. Safe travels for coming in. You have been watching The Market on CCP TV, Community College of Philadelphia's educational channel. I am Dr. Ardencio Hall Karambe, wishing you all the best. Ashe, ashe, ashe.